This is the I Am a Mainframer podcast, brought to you by the Linux Foundation's Open Mainframe project. Episodes explore the careers of mainframe professionals and offer insights into the industry and technology. Now, your host, Senior Analyst and Vice President of Sales and Business Development at Futurum Research, Steven Dickens.
Hello and welcome. My name's Steven Dickens and you're with us here today for the I'm a Mainframer podcast. I'm joined today by Ben Daniels. Ben, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
So I've heard a lot of good things about you from a good friend of mine, Cameron Seay. Tell the listeners a little bit about yourself. Let's just get started here. Sort of position what you do today and then we'll use that as a jumping off point for the rest of the conversation.
Yeah, so for sure. My name is Ben Daniels, like you said. I'm originally from Syracuse, New York. Graduated undergrad at North Carolina A&T State University, and that's where I met Dr. Seay, or Cam. Yeah, so he was actually my professor for Java and a few mainframe classes, and wound up being my actual formal mentor. Still is to this day. So we keep pretty good touch.
So that's how you've kind of come to the show here. Let's go back. Tell us a little bit about what you did at the college with Cam. If you don't know Cameron Seay as a listener, go Google this guy, go check him out, follow him on all the social channels. Literally one of the best professors out there in the mainframe space worldwide, I would say. But Ben, talk us through kind of, you drop into his classes, kind of just walk us through, because I know there's a lot of students who listen to the show.
Yeah.
Who are maybe thinking kind of, how do I get into the mainframe space? What's that kind of first experience, if you will?
For sure. So back at A&T, the first class I had with Dr. Seay was a Java class. And funny story there is I got 30s on the first two quizzes. So 30 and 30. I think he gave us 20 points for writing our name. He knew it was going to be a tough jump for us. But after that class, I actually wound up passing that class with a 93, I believe. So I'm like, okay, I was able to get over that hurdle. I like this professor. Let's see where this is going as well. But I saw that all the other students that were doing well in my department were studying mainframe, or they were doing the Master the Mainframe Competition at the time. And so I reached out and said, hey, I want to be a part of that too, because I wanted to be as competitive as possible when it came to graduating and ultimately being prepared to get a job upon graduation. But
it's crazy that there's a reaction there of like, get a job after you graduate, but that's why you go, I suppose.
And it's not guaranteed either. There's a lot of people who graduate and they don't have jobs. They wind up having to go back, or trying to figure out, okay, look back, what did I miss? And I wanted to make sure that I put myself in position that I didn't in the best position possible upon graduation.
So we've had a few people on the show who've been on Master the Mainframe. We've had a past winner of the show, of the competition on the show a couple of years ago now.
Yeah.
Describe that first experience, kind of logging onto a mainframe, having to do something, just kind of, because I think and the reason why I asked the question, there's a bit of a perception that this platform's kind of old, hard to use, kind of, there's barriers to entry, you've got to kind of be super experienced. Was that your experience? Because I tend to hear it's not, but I'm interested.
So no, that wasn't my experience. The old piece, yes, it does seem old. It's got an old feel because it's the terminal. So there's no GUI. You're not seeing anything. So you log in, it's a black screen, the boop, 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 boop. It's just bouncing there. It's like type in whatever you want to type in. But the Master of the Mainframe competition for me was really educational, because there's directions up until there's not. So there's directions, they tell you what to do, and then they're like, all right, now with what we taught you, do this. You're like, whoa. So you have to go figure it out. But it's very educational, in that regard. But I completed part 1, and then I completed part 2 to get the t-shirt. I did not do part 3. I wanted the t-shirt so that I could walk around the department and say, hey, I'm one of you guys.
Fantastic. So how did you find that sort of experience, getting on the platform, understanding what it was? Was it kind of simple to figure it out once you got some basic instructions, or was it harder?
It was a healthy challenge. I wouldn't say it was easy or simple, but it was challenging, as it should be, right? Master the Mainframe Competition. So it is a competition, but it was doable. It's not anything that I wouldn't, it's not daunting. I don't think it's like elitist or anything like that, right? It's out of reach. But
Hmm.
you have to have this coming in, but you have to be willing to work for sure.
Yeah. So talk us through, you've obviously spent some time on the mainframe. Cam and the team
Mhm.
have sort of got you orientated. What did that mean for you as you were coming out and starting to think about graduating? I suppose, what opportunities did it give you, and kind of
Yeah.
how did it set you up for future success?
Yeah. Okay. So I wound up getting an internship at Cisco. I got that from the career fair at school. So Cisco wasn't the mainframe. But since I stayed so lock and step with Dr. Seay, an undergrad, as my mentor, he wound up being able to take me to some conferences. So, for instance, I wound up at Marist College.
Hmm.
I went to North Carolina A&T. I wound up in Marist College because I'm originally from Syracuse. Marist College isn't that far. So I wound up in Marist College during a break on my way home for the holidays and got to network and meet people there. Another time, another conference he took me to was the New York Institute of Technology. And I met Len San Lucia?
I know Len very well.
There you
Great
go.
guy.
Right.
Been on this show, and I'd consider Len a friend of mine. Really great guy.
There you go. I mean, exactly. I agree with all of that. We met at the New York Institute of Technology. There was a conference there, and
Mhm.
Dr. Che didn't have any budget or funds, but because I was on holiday and I'm from Syracuse, I said I'll stop in New York City on the way up. So I stopped in New York City on the way up. Len and his wife took us to dinner, and
Mhm.
so now I'm at dinner with the great Len San Lucia because I took mainframe classes. And so just from a networking standpoint and meeting people standpoint, and I even spoke to Len recently. I was actually entertaining the idea of getting into mainframe. This was over the past year. I ultimately
Mhm.
didn't do it. I wound up at my current role now, which is a cloud engineer at Oracle. But just I met Len 10 years ago.
Mhm.
So we're talking about from 10 years ago, just from doing the mainframe. I still have people that I know today, that I remember fondly, and hopefully they remember me fondly as well.
Well, I think you're on the show, so Cam put you forward. So I think you can say that with some confidence.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you've ultimately not ended up on the mainframe
Yeah.
technology platform, but I think what I'm picking up, and I want to just check I'm picking it up, is that as you were starting to make those early career moves, access to the mainframe community
Yeah.
kind of helped you get started. Would that be a kind of fair summary, do you think?
So I actually did get offered a job, like, a verbal offer at one of these conferences. The only
Hmm.
reason I didn't jump on it and really entertain it is because I had already accepted a job offer
Got
at GE, which is where when I graduated. So there was tremendous opportunity there. It's almost like it just never lined up.
hmm.
But the opportunity was there, the interest is there. I think mainframe is it's an amazing technology. And I think it's, once you it's just so vast. It's one of those things I know that I've only scratched the surface of it, even though I've taken 2 classes, even though I've been to these conferences, met people and all this stuff. I've only scratched the surface as far as, the power of it and what it can do. And I always see in the news, I follow Cam on LinkedIn. So it's always growing. There's more, there's more, there's more. But for me, it's that there was opportunity there. They just didn't line up. I had at different points in my life and in my short career so far, I've had other opportunities that I felt were a better fit at the time.
So tell us what you're doing now. You mentioned you're at Oracle. What's the role now? I think
Yeah,
our listeners and viewers will be interested to understand. Kind of come out of college, you've done the classic sort of comp sci.
mhm,
You've had some mainframe in there.
yep,
What's that ultimately sort of? You mentioned maybe 10 years. What's that ultimately led to? Where are you today?
a lot. So I started at GE in their IT leadership program. I worked there for about a year and a half. After I decided to leave GE, um, just because it wasn't shaping up to what I thought it would be. Right, you
Mhm.
graduate college, they say something. As a college grad, you don't understand
Yeah.
because you can't translate. School isn't the same as real life. And so I decided to leave there, and I ultimately came to Washington D.C. area and started as a government contractor. So I became a systems engineer. That was a web-based application, and I was on the sustainment team. So anytime anything went wrong with it, I'm digging in, Splunk, checking the logs, what is going on? Why isn't this up right now? And doing those maybe every 4 hours, doing a system check, making sure top to bottom everything works. And that was for an electronic health records web-based application, and that's
Mhm.
supporting the government. So I was supporting actually DoD and VA, so our veterans and military there. But after that, I went and became an app dynamics engineer because I got a little bit of introduction to app dynamics while I was in the first role, leveraged that to become an app dynamics engineer supporting Department of State. After that, I wound up supporting the Intel community as a senior data engineer. I was actually a data analyst as well, so I got familiar with MongoDB, NoSQL, and all of that. So, but all of my foundation from just my IT degree, it plugged right in. Like I was able to pick stuff up and everything like that. And I believe it would be the same if and when I was to get into a mainframe role. But most recently, like to answer your question, I'm a cloud solutions engineer now.
And
So
working for Oracle,
yeah,
helping.
yeah.
Is
So
that
as there,
kind of
as,
is
go
that
ahead.
internally within Oracle, or is that
Yep.
working with Oracle's clients?
It's working with clients. So it's actually a sales role.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's client facing, but it's very exciting. I just started over there. Hasn't even been a year yet. So I'm learning a ton. But I also have the AWS Solution Architect Associate certification from my data engineer role. So that plays a role in it here. So I already have a cloud foundation. So now I'm learning Oracle's cloud. But I mean, in technology, it's endless.
There's so much to learn, right? So
Yes.
much to learn.
Yeah.
So, I mean, the way I listen to that, Ben, is made some early moves, got out of college with a strong foundation, and no Cameron and the team there run a great program.
Yeah.
But I think you've been able. What I'm listening to is that you've moved around, changed technologies. That there's not been those barriers to, like, I'm a mainframe guy, I'm a MongoDB guy, I'm an app dynamics guy. You've been able to kind of pivot and move to different
Oh, for sure.
technologies. Why,
Absolutely.
why do you think that is? Is that just curiosity to kind of learn sort of some of the fundamentals that Cam and the team gave you? Kind of where would you pin that down to?
I'm competitive. That's it.
Okay.
I'm competitive, and I don't know what I don't know.
Hmm.
And I know that there is a lot out there that I don't know. So I'm very curious, very competitive. And so if an opportunity presents itself, I I try to look at it honestly and say, hey, is this a good opportunity? Should I seize this? And just try to say yes to as many things in life that make sense, because ultimately that'll make me more well-rounded and more competitive.
Well, I think that curiosity's, I've had people at the ends of their careers who've maybe
Mhm.
retired out of the mainframe after sort of 40, 45 years on this show. I've had younger professionals. I think the consistent theme that kind of comes through from the people who are successfully building their careers is that curiosity point that
Mhm.
you mentioned.
Yeah.
The willingness to, hey, I'm maybe out of my comfort zone here, but I
Yeah.
see something that's interesting. Well, I mean, maybe if there's some examples of things that you can talk about there.
Yeah, I think the that brings me back to to those mainframe classes. There was the curiosity there. What does that t-shirt mean? These guys are just wearing t-shirts around the department, and they're, whispers and all that, oh, we're doing this, we're doing that. I'm like, I had that curiosity, not the arrogance of, oh, I got it all figured out, I'm good, I have a good GPA, whatever, whatever. It's like, what's that? So jumping in led to everything that I, said earlier, right? And then even the curiosity and the challenging myself to try to become an app dynamics engineer after only dealing with it in a limited capacity at the previous role, opportunity presented itself. I said, all right, let's let's try that. Let's, challenge myself for that, and to do that. And it's just like my current role is my first role in sales. It's a challenge. I've got a lot of friends though, from school who are in sales now, and it's, can you introduce me to someone? That's that curiosity. I want to understand the sales process, right? And so I probably went through 30 interviews, no offers, all within Cisco for sales. Got to keep going. Ultimately, I applied at the Oracle job, and got right in. But I credit those 30 interviews for getting me, comfortable enough and competent enough to ultimately pass that Oracle interview.
And I think as I say, we have a lot of sort of younger listeners, people who are starting to think about their career in technology. I think there's a couple of key themes. I mean, continuing to go through the process, continuing to put in the work, continuing to go through 30 interviews, be unsuccessful at all of them. Sorry to
Yeah.
mention it again.
No. It's cool. It's the story. It's
The
real. Yeah.
process, right? You got to put in
Yeah.
the work. And then I
Mhm.
think that curiosity is a good sort of foundation. I've heard it said on this podcast, but it's always worth repeating. I think putting that curiosity out there, and I can say that from my own career as well, being able to go, okay, I'm way past the end of my skis here. I'm just going to double down on the research, double down on the knowledge, double down on the reading, go find some mountain guides, as I call them, who've
Yeah.
walked this path before, and go and get them to sort of sit down. And I had a pleasure of sitting opposite an IBM distinguished engineer when I worked for IBM. He was deep, deep, deep in the core technology, and I was in sort of product management and customer facing roles. And I used to often bounce into his office and go, okay, you're just going to have to help me here.
Yep.
What is this piece of technology? Just give it me like I'm a 5-year-old, explain it to me. And you would think over, and I probably spent 6 or 7 years sitting opposite this guy, and you would think he wouldn't be willing to continue to sort of put up with me, but he's like, you're curious, you're asking the right questions, you're trying to learn.
Mhm.
Great mentor for me, and somebody who was prepared to sort of spend the time. So I think in the
Yeah.
same way that you had Cameron, and sounds like continues to use
Yeah.
Cameron for that role, I
Yeah.
think finding some of those people.
Yeah. To add to that, I would say, especially for those younger listeners, you got to take ownership, right, of that, because that IBM distinguished engineer, he's not going to go out and pull you into his office and say, hey, I'm working on some really interesting stuff here. You had to go in and pop in on your own.
Yeah.
And that's what sparks that growth. And it's the same for me and Dr. Seay. I said, hey, I want to come meet in your office. And I just asked him, I said, hey, I'd like you to be my mentor. And he's, what? He's like, I'm your professor, right? This is literally how the conversation went. He said, I'm humbled, for you to, make that request or would think of me that way, but I don't, basically, what do you want? And I said, I don't know. You got connections to the industry. You know what's going on. I said, let's meet every 2 weeks. I'll update you on what I'm doing, and you can update me. Let me know if there's anything you think I should be, involved in or whatever. He said, okay, that'll work. And as a result, every 2 weeks we would meet for 30 minutes, an hour, and then he'd say, hey, I got a conference coming up. You can come if you want to. That's how those conferences happened. But I
Mhm.
had to sit down with him and say, hey, I'm hungry. I want to do more.
And I think that's the key thing. Those opportunities are out there.
Hmm.
Those distinguished engineers sit just fortuitously are there. Those professors are there. Those people are in these positions are always willing to help, in my experience, and it
Yeah.
sounds like the same from yours.
Yep.
But there's not a formal program. There's not a kind of, hey, on a Wednesday afternoon, my office is open. Please come in. There's a sign posted.
No.
There's not that stuff there, and I think people look for that. And oftentimes, and I think our discussion here proves it, you got to go find it. It's
Yeah.
on you to own the opportunity. Some of the people who've worked with me in my career, it's like, hey, I need help. Can you help me?
Yeah.
And they say yes, I think.
Yeah. And if they can't, that's also good information
Mhm.
because now you got to move on to somebody else.
Well, and oftentimes I'll go, it's not me who can help you with that,
This
but I
person.
know somebody, let me introduce you. And
Yep.
that's how the networking works. So, I mean, great discussion, Ben. I mean, I always ask on these shows, and I'm really interested to understand your perspective with what your current job role is.
Yeah.
You've had exposure to the mainframe. Where do you see that platform sort of 5, 6, 7 years out from now?
Just more modernized. I think it's going to continue to grow. I think that it's going to, I don't know. I have a sneaking suspicion that it's going to wind up becoming more of a household name and more people are going to know about it.
Mhm.
And that's, if nothing else, because of what we just saw with the airline industry, right? Everybody, those flights, it just went down. What happened? What was that? And my brain, because I know the mainframe is, the foundation for airlines and banks and things like that, or has been for a long time. I'm thinking like, did they try a migration? Did they try to migrate to cloud or something? And so as those things start to happen, people are going to be more educated and more exposed to, hey, by the way, the mainframe is running all this stuff. And I think that's an opportunity that IBM will probably capitalize on. Like, hey, because IBM has a cloud as well.
Yeah.
So now they're going to be able to play both sides of the fence. Like, you can do mainframe or you can do cloud.
Well, I think it's going to be interesting that, for me, the way I look at that is the mainframe is going to become part of that cloud story. I don't see it as an either or. I see it as a hybrid. It's either connecting a mainframe to a cloud, or where IBM's going with some of its development is to have IBM in the mainframes in the cloud, so that it's less of an on-premises structure. It's actually in the cloud. Some of the things they're doing with Hyper Protect and the WASI stuff are really interesting for me. And one of the other questions, and we've spent a bit of time on it in the show, you've got a great perspective, I think, to answer this question. What advice would you be giving to the sort of 22-year-old Ben Daniels? You're sort of forging your way out into the market. We've got, as I say, a lot of younger listeners and watchers to the show. What would you be saying to those people sort of maybe taking their first step into the market in their career?
It's as I'm actually thinking it through, on one hand, I would say slow down. Slow down 100%. But at the same time, yeah, it's almost like you want to slow down with your movement and activity so that you can really understand where you're at and get a better understanding of the opportunities that you actually have. Because sometimes you move too fast. Looking back at myself, laser focus. I want to be go, 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 go. But there were tremendous opportunities to meet people, to ask questions, to ask more questions, and to really get to know people and build relationships. Sometimes you'll move too fast when you're younger and you miss opportunities to build relationships that can be very valuable moving forward. And you can also be valuable to others. But if you're moving too fast, then you don't have enough time for that relationship to build.
I think that's great advice. And that's the first time somebody said that. I think everybody's like on this churn. They want to move fast. They want to do, what's the next role? What's the next course? What's the next certification? What's next? What's next? And I think that's really good feedback. Maybe take a breath. Spend some time in the moment. Really spend some time thinking. Ben, this has been a fantastic conversation. Really great to have you on the show.
No, I thoroughly enjoyed it. Thank you for having me.
So you've been listening to the I'm a Mainframer podcast. Please click and subscribe. And if you like the show, give us a great rating. We'll see you next time. Thanks very much for listening.
Thank you for tuning in to I Am a Mainframer. Liked what you heard? Subscribe to get every episode, or watch us online at openmainframeproject.org. Until next time, this is the I Am a Mainframer podcast. Insights for today's mainframe professionals.